Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode on the show, Control or Be Controlled, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Carl Richards. Carl, welcome to the show.
Darlington, thanks so much. I'm excited to be here today.
Okay, Carl, I would like you to introduce yourself to my audience. A very, very good introduction so they can know who you are.
Yeah, sure. Carl Richards, as you've already indicated, that's who I am. I live in Eastern Ontario, Canada. Spent 25 years in the radio broadcasting space before becoming an entrepreneur. 6 years ago, at the recording of this, it's the summer of 2026 here where I live in Canada. So 6 years as an entrepreneur and loving every minute of it. I'm married. I have a spouse. I have a 155-pound Great Dane. And where I live in Eastern Ontario is a town called Gananoque. It's the gateway to the Thousand Islands. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. So I get to enjoy the summers, boating and camping and swimming and occasionally playing golf. And yeah, serving a lot of people in the business space as a podcast strategist and podcast host, running a podcast agency. And then, when I have time, we also like to entertain guests and let them explore my passion for, well, I have many passions, but every now and again, I think I'm a Red Seal chef, which I'm not, but I like to certainly entertain guests and friends when I can too.
All right, Carl, thank you so much. So I have some questions here for you, and I would like us to get into them.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So why would a business owner or expert want to start a podcast in today's crowded marketplace?
Yeah, Darlington, that's a really good question. And we could flip the script and say, why would somebody want to write a book? There's enough books out there. Well, why would somebody want to, put their messaging onto the pages and put it out there? And I think a podcast is the same way. There comes a certain point in an entrepreneur's journey, whether you're a coach, a consultant, or a successful business owner, where you want to move to the next level. And for most people, that means hiring a coach or a consultant. And typically a coach or a consultant will say, well, if you want to level up, then that's when you should consider writing a book or going on a speaking tour or starting a podcast. Because what it's doing, Darlington, if I can say this, is it's really helping to elevate your brand, your business, and your credibility. And it's putting you in that category of one so people see you as the visible go-to expert. One of the challenges is that there's so many people wandering around and they're experts. They're really good at what they do, but nobody knows who they are because they don't have they don't have a podcast, or they're not even being guests on podcasts. They haven't taken the time to really put themselves out there. And the next phase is putting yourself out there. So that's what I would say. If you really want to elevate your business and take it to the next level, that's where, as I said, in the past, it would be write a book and go on a speaking tour. But now it's start a podcast.
All right, Craig, thank you so much. So what are the biggest benefits of a podcast can bring to someone's personal brand and business, especially for a small business who is just starting out?
Yeah, certainly. I would actually change that and say that if you're a small business just starting out, probably the last thing you need is a podcast. You probably need clients. But certainly I would say there's an opportunity for you to be in the podcasting space because you can be a guest. You can be a guest on podcasts, for example, and showcase your expertise that way. But some of the benefits are you're landing in front of more of your ideal clients. There's so many ways in which we can attract clients now, but I think the best way to get it is with a podcast that has a very niche audience, because those are the folks who are going to probably want to do business with you, or they'll want to follow up with you. There's tricks to making sure that you're getting the right people to your podcast by making sure you have the right content, making sure you have the right calls to action built within your show, but definitely having that messaging that people really want to hear, and guests, if you're I know, Darlington, you have guests on your show, so bringing on the right guests also, I think, is part of that as well. But I think that some of the benefits are it's going to elevate your credibility and your brand. It's going to showcase you as the expert. It's going to let people know that you do have something out there to say. But if you're brand new in business, I'd say if you're looking at podcasting, consider the guesting route first. Firstly, because it's going to get you yourself a little bit more familiar with it. But it's also going to help to get you in front of those audiences and develop that credibility that's so important when you're putting yourself out there as a podcast host.
Okay, Craig. So you identified 5 myths that hold people back from starting a podcast. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have today?
Well, like you said, there's 5 of them that we like to refer to. So I'll quickly go through those so you have an indication as to what they are. The first myth is the money myth, and a lot of people attune that to, well, it's either how much is this going to cost me, or what's the upfront investment to having a podcast, where the real question should be, what's the investment or what's the risk of not having a podcast? And it's very important because, especially for business owners, you're likely leveraging your podcast to get more clients. Well, imagine if a podcast brought you 1 or 2 clients a year and a client was worth, say, $20,000. Is it worth the investment to have a podcast? And what if you didn't have a show? What are you missing out on by not having a show? Or what are you missing out on by not having a guest? So it's really about the money myth, is not understanding the value of what a podcast can bring you, not just for business, but even for, again, to elevate your credibility. Maybe there's partnerships and joint ventures that you can be looking at as well. So that definitely fits into that category. The next myth is the competition myth. There's too many out there already. Why should I start a podcast? Well, that doesn't stop you from building a website, right? Most business owners in 2026 at the recording of this, they have a website. There's billions of websites out there. There's less than 4 million podcasts out there right now, maybe getting closer to 5 million now. So it's not that there's competition. It's how are you cutting through that noise? What is your messaging, and how can you leverage that to your advantage? So it's not about how many are out there. It's how are you going to add impact to your audience? I'll say that with the competition myth. Sometimes the competition too is, well, I'm not famous. I can't compete with Joe Rogan or some of those big name podcasters. You don't have to. Their audience isn't your audience. Your audience will be specific to what your messaging is. So think about that as you navigate through the competition myth. The next myth is the content myth. What am I ever going to talk about? For every entrepreneur, I always say, if you have sent an email, posted on social media, written a book, created a program, if you have clients, if you have testimonials, you have content. It's not about content creation, Darlington. It's more about content curation so that it's ready for a podcast audience and having the right calls to action built into that. So that's the content myth and how you can navigate through that. The tech myth, it's too technical. How can I ever navigate through the tech? It's the same reason why, Darlington, I don't fix my own car. If I did, I'd probably have a spouse screaming at me to not do that. But what do we do when we don't understand something? We go to the expert. We don't perform our own dental surgery or do our own open heart surgery. We go to the expert for that, right? So similarly, if you don't know how to do something, you go to the expert who can help you navigate through all of the technical stuff. So it's not about who or how do you navigate through it. It's who do you need to talk to understand it more clearly and to help you in this space. And the final myth is the time myth. Now, this is an interesting one because there's a lot of misconceptions about podcasting and how long an episode should be. As a matter of fact, Darlington, I have asked this question multiple times when I've been doing trainings and coaching, and when I've spoken on stages, or even spoken on my podcast. I've said, how long should a podcast episode be? And, I get various answers, everything from 10 minutes to 2 hours. Well, a podcast episode needs to be as long as it needs to be, right? That's the honest to goodness truth. How long will your audience engage you? So if you're vying to get a large audience, which is probably the wrong thing that you should be doing anyways, you should be getting a more specific audience. But if you're looking for large numbers, and you probably want to have a podcast that is digestible time-wise for everyone to listen to. If you have a niche audience, maybe you can talk a little bit longer, but the bottom line is, how long can your audience engage you? And then think about, not the time as in how am I going to find the time to do this? If you're a successful business owner and you're ready to level up, it shouldn't be how are you going to find the time? It's who can I find to help me manage the back end of my show. So all I have to do is like what you're doing, Darlington, and that's play the role as the host, right? Play the host, interview some great guests, and have somebody else take care of all of the back end work for you. So those are the 5 myths: the money myth, the competition myth, the content myth, the tech myth, and the time myth. And once you navigate through all of those misconceptions, then you can start to really have some fun and go, oh, I can get through this. What's the next step for me to creating or conceptualizing my podcast?
Okay, Craig. So moving on, what separates a successful podcast from one that struggles to gain attention?
Can you say that again?
What separates a successful podcast from one that struggles to gain attention?
Very good question. I'm glad you asked that question. I think what separates the two is focus and probably strategy. I think a lot of us look at a successful podcast and go, oh my goodness, they're just lucky. Or, oh my goodness, they're a successful podcaster because they've been podcasting for so long. That may be true, especially if they've been podcasting for a while. And you have to think of podcasting as a long game, not a short game. But I will almost guarantee you that a podcast that is successful probably has a strategy behind it. If you listen to the show, you probably feel like as an audience member, the host is speaking to you directly, and even the guest is probably speaking to you directly. And Darlington, I'm hoping that I'm having an impact on your listeners. And if you're hearing this today, the conversation Darlington and I are having, I encourage you to let Darlington know so he'll know exactly how this conversation has been. But I think the other thing too, Darlington, is the success of a show is, are you achieving the goals that you set out for that show? And every show is different. Every host is different. Some people, it's not for business. They want to, it's, maybe to promote their passion project, or maybe they have a love of sports and they want to be talking about sports, and maybe it's a hobby or an interest. But it's about, are you achieving the goals that you are setting out? And do you have a goal? Do you have a vision? Do you have a plan? Do you have a strategy to help you get there? And that's what I think separates a successful show from a show that struggles and doesn't last for too long. And I already indicated another thing too that I can't emphasize enough is that podcasting is a long game, not a short game. So don't think of, oh my goodness, I've got 10 episodes and nobody's listening. That's pretty common if you only have 10 episodes to not have a massive audience, and it's okay. Keep going. Keep going. Move towards 15 episodes, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 episodes. Then that's when you start to see the magic happen. So don't get bogged down because most podcasts will fail within their first 10 episodes because people give up, because they don't have massive numbers or they don't feel like they're having the impact. But keep with it. Like anything else, you get better by doing. Can you imagine if I could parallel this into something else, Darlington? If a guy like Tiger Woods, one of the world's most famous and successful golfers, if he only hit a golf ball 10 times and then said, well, why am I not a successful golfer? It takes that much time and effort and skill and hitting 10,000 golf balls the right way to be good at it and to be successful. Same as your podcast. You don't necessarily have to have 10,000 episodes, but you need to do it more than 10 times, and you need to make some mistakes, and you need to learn the lessons and have some fun along the way for it to be successful. And as I said, have a plan and a strategy to help you get there.
Okay, Carl, thank you so much. So, what is one mistake you see new podcasters make when launching their show?
I think one mistake that I see, aside from some of the ones that we've already talked about today, is they're in a big hurry. They launch, they're ready to. Well, actually, no, they're not ready. They launch too quickly. They get all excited to host a podcast, and then they launch with one episode, and that's it. And then they wait a month, and then they host another podcast, and then maybe we don't hear then you don't hear from them for another few weeks, and then. So I think really the biggest mistake is again not going in with a plan or a strategy for your content publishing. You really need to figure out those first 10 episodes or those first even 20 episodes. what are they going to be about? What's the story that you want to be sharing with people in those first 10, 15, 20 episodes? And you don't have to publish those all at once, by the way, but it's about having that plan or having that storyline built in so you can then sit down, record your content, get the right guests in that you need to help you do that, and then assess it from there. But I would say launching too soon and not having a plan are two of the big things that I find a lot of podcast hosts are doing. Then it's not serving them if they're launching too quickly. That, and I think that we're in a time and place, Darlington, where quality matters. Recording on your iPhone might sound great if it's a hobby, but if you're doing this for business, do you show up with just an iPhone in a business meeting, or do you show up with an iPad and a clipboard and a binder and are you showing up with the right tools to do the job for business? So really looking and sounding professional, that becomes very important if you're doing a podcast for business and you want to be seen as a successful show.
Okay, so Carl, as a podcaster like myself, how do I use podcasts to build relationships and create opportunities beyond just gaining listeners? Like right now, you're supposed to be my friend. I can make you my friend just by having this podcast. How can I do that?
Darlington, we're friends. We'll just say that we're friends. We'll just do it right here, right now. We're friends. But I think that the biggest thing is to always be on the lookout for opportunities to go beyond the podcast. So is there a way that Carl Richards and Darlington can work together? And I don't know if there is. I have no idea. But I've had many people on my show, Communication, Connection, Community. And if I feel there's something afterwards, if I feel there's something that goes beyond just the conversation we've had on the show, I'll mention that before we hang up the call. And I'll say, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation. Can we have a follow-up call? I'd like to find more about what it is that you do, and if there's some synergy or if there's a way I can best support you. That's one of the easiest ways to do it, is to do that. But then also start following people on social media. Get into their ecosystem. If they have a book, buy their book. If they haven't sent you a copy already, buy their book. Start learning more about them. Those are where I think some of those opportunities come from, is when you take a genuine interest in what it is that they're doing outside of them just being a guest. That's where some of those great opportunities for, whether it's being a joint venture partner, whether it's building something together, maybe it's hosting an event together, maybe it's just, I don't know, having somebody as a speaker at an event of yours or being a speaker at one of their events. So it's looking for those opportunities to do something that goes beyond the show. And that just doesn't happen by magic, by the way. It happens by really being, you keeping your eyes open and really being intentional about and being aware that, there could be an opportunity here. And if there isn't, it's okay. But if there is, you never know where that relationship could take you for business or even how it can impact other people as well.
All right, Carl, thank you so much. Just mentioned that we are both friends, and I really love that. So it means I can reach out to you if I have any issues I want to address, right?
Oh, you sure can, for sure. Absolutely, you can reach out.
Okay, so because I want to make the most out of podcasting. So I want you to tell me how I can make the most out of podcasting. How can I make the most out of podcasting?
Yeah, I think
practically,
yeah,
not just theory.
Yeah, practically, I think, again, are you showing up every day dedicated to serving your audience? I think that's one of the things that we forget, that, as a podcaster, we go through the motions. We host the show, we have some guests on, it's fun. And we sometimes forget that, there's an audience there. Are we doing it with the right intention? Are we doing it with their best interests in mind? Are the listeners giving us feedback? Are we soliciting feedback from our audience? I quite often will do that. And again, I know it might be challenging, especially if you host a solo show, and Darlington, obviously you don't, but there are some people who do, and they say, well, I don't know how to do that. You do it the same way. You say, hey, thanks for being my audience. I'm really glad you're here today. Ask with intention. I really appreciate your feedback. So if you have something you'd like to share, please do it. But I really think when you're showing up with intention, when you're showing up with the audience's best interest in mind, when you're showing up with quality content showing for them, when you're showing up with quality guests for them, when you're showing up thinking that, hey, I'm having impact. that's where I think you are having the greatest success in your show. And that's where I think those are the beyond the practical. I think it's going even into the spiritual. Are you getting into the hearts and minds of the audience? And if you can say yes, then there's a successful show right there.
Great. Thank you so much, Carl. I really hope I can be able to make the most out of podcasting by using your advice. So I still have a couple more questions for you because I'm a podcaster, so I would want to just ask you so many questions. All right. So you often say that podcasting is a speaking opportunity. What does that mean, and why is that important?
Oh, I love this question. I'm glad you brought it up, Darlington, because there are a lot of speakers around the world who sort of don't look at podcasting as speaking. They look at it as something different. And here's the thing that I share with people. You can make it a goal to speak in front of live audiences on stage, but I'll tell you something. It's a tough world out there. There's a lot of people who are vying for the same speaking gigs that you are. There's all the things you have to deal with if you do get the speaking gig, travel, missed flights, lumpy pillows, lost luggage, all of those things, meeting planners that maybe don't have everything together the way you want it. Imagine if you could just circumvent that by being a guest on podcasts, by speaking on other people's stages. And some people dismiss it, Darlington, because they go, well, I only speak on podcasts that have at least 10,000 or 50,000 listeners. And I quite often will flip the script, Darlington, and I'll say, do you only look for stages that provide you with an audience of 10,000 people or 50,000 people? And most speakers will say, well, no, of course not. Same thing with a podcast. I will say that, okay, well, what if your ideal audience, you could speak in front of them every single week? Doesn't matter the size of the audience. Let's say it's only 50 people or 100 people. Would you say no to that? And you know what? Most people say, well, absolutely not. I wouldn't say no to that. That's why I believe that podcasting should be treated as, especially if you're a business owner and you're looking to do more speaking, it should be treated as a speaking opportunity. Now, one of the pushbacks that sometimes we get from people is, well, yeah, but if I'm on a physical stage, I can sell stuff from the back of the room, or I can have conversations with actual people who have seen me speak. You can do that too from a podcast. You just have to make sure you position your content and your calls to action in such a way that people do come back into your ecosystem to have those conversations with you. And that's a lost opportunity for a lot of guests and a lot of people in the podcasting space who don't treat it as a stage, but it should be treated as a stage. Just like being on a radio program is a stage. It's a different kind of stage, but it's still an opportunity to talk to your ideal customer or your ideal client or your ideal audience member.
Carl, thank you so much.
Hey, all good.
All right. So, Carl, if someone listening suspects that they or their someone listening right now is looking to start their own podcast journey, what is one thing you wish they would do? And looking back at your own journey, at your own podcast journey, what is one thing you wish you would have done differently?
It's the same answer. Sort of, kind of. I think if it were me, I spent 25 years in radio broadcasting, so I thought I knew it all, and I realized I didn't. And I wish that I had asked an expert or asked somebody who already knew, somebody who already had a podcast, the best way to get things started and the best way to craft my content and the best way to do my publishing and my distribution. I wish I had done that. So that's my wish for, if you're listening to this and you're saying, I'd like to start a podcast, what do I do? Guess what? I'm the expert now. So I wish that you would reach out. Nobody calls anymore. Nobody picks up the phone and calls, but reach out. Go to my website. You can book some time with me to have a conversation. I'd love to find out what your goals are for podcasting. What are you interested in talking about? And how can I best support you? And maybe what are some of the stumbling blocks that are keeping you stuck from bringing that idea for your podcast to the surface? Love to have that conversation with people all the time, Darlington. And it's complimentary. It's not something I charge for. So definitely always looking to have those conversations. But I wish I had the the common sense to ask an expert, somebody who's already doing this, and that's what I'm sharing with your audience today. So if you're hearing this, don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help. Ask the questions that you need to ask to decide whether or not a podcast rather is the right thing for you.
Okay, Carl, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your insight and experience with us. For those who would like to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, certainly. It's very, very simple. You can go to podcastsolutionsmadesimple.com, podcastsolutionsmadesimple.com. That's the site you can go to find out more about what we're all about. And that's also the site where you can go to book some time with me to have a conversation if that's what you'd like to do. So podcastsolutionsmadesimple.com. It's the best way. And all my social handles are there as well.
Okay, Carl, thank you so much. Podcasting has become more than just a way to share information. It's a powerful platform for building trust, creating relationships, and establishing authority in industries. So, to my listeners out there, make sure to check out Carl's. Check out his work. If you're an aspiring podcaster or you're already a podcaster like myself, please share this episode to someone out there who might want to start podcasting or is already a podcaster to help them improve and make the most out of podcasting. Carl, thank you so much, and I really appreciate you for taking out your time to share with us your knowledge and insights on podcasting.
Darlington, thanks. It's been fun. Thanks for having me on your show.
All right. And to my audience, I love you guys so much. You are the reason why we are able to do this. Take care, and I will see you guys again on the next episode. Thank you for listening. Bye, guys.